Wow, happy new year, everybody. Welcome to the Grants and Contract Podcast here. My name is Abraham. I'm one of your hosts. I've got Lainey and one of our guests here today. So, we're going to have a really exciting time here because we're going to be talking about a lady that loves to give money away. So, I know some of you guys that you love to hear about money, a lot of grants out there, opportunities out there. But it's a new year, and I can't believe that 2024 is already over and 2025 is here. So if you are joining us live, welcome to the Grants and Contract Podcast. This is going to be a year where you're going to reach new heights. You're going to get new grants, you're getting new contracts, and we're excited that you're part of our community here because this is where you can come and learn and help you on your journey in terms of changing how your future looks. And so you do that by exploring new things. You do that by educating yourself. You do that by just hanging out with smart people like Lainey and our guest here. If you hang out with her today, I promise you're going to be a lot wiser after today about grants and a lot of different opportunities that she have to share with us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lainey, and then we'll get started from there.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So excited to be here. We've missed y'all the last couple of weeks. I'm really excited to introduce to our guest, Michelle Prater. She's with the North Georgia Community Foundation. And I'm going to let her just share a little bit about herself, who she's with, and we're going to jump in.
Well, good morning, almost afternoon, everyone. As Lainey said, I'm Michelle Prater. I'm the president and CEO of the North Georgia Community Foundation. And I have always found that most folks have heard of a community foundation, they just don't know what we do. And so we thought we'd share just a little bit about what we do and how we work with nonprofits, because there's a lot of different ways that we do that. And I've had the privilege of being here for 9 years in this role, and love the work that we do and love the impact that we can make with our fund holders, support, and to our nonprofit partners.
Yes. So let's go ahead and go into what is a community foundation. So I think a lot of people, they might have heard of one, or maybe they've seen some advertisement, but they're not necessarily sure about the ins and outs of a community foundation, and even like, should they get involved with their local community foundation?
Well, the first answer is yes, they should get involved with their local community foundation. But it is true. And if we have like the next 3 hours, I'll share everything that we do. But just kidding. I will give you the kind of the highlights of what we do. So when you think about a community foundation, it's one of those things that's always hard to communicate what you do, because we do so many different things. If you want to think about kind of the simplest form of what we do, is that we're like a philanthropic bank. So folks will put their charitable dollars into different types of funds with us. That could be a donor advised fund. That could be a scholarship fund. It could be a nonprofit who is setting their money aside to grow. It could be a business who wants to, do some charitable work, and they want to put a fund with us. So they put their money into the community foundation in their fund. They get the tax benefit at that time, and that money is then invested. So they earn a return on that investment, which allows the money to grow and allows them to make a greater impact. So that's kind of the high level piece of what we do. That said, we work with really two audiences. We work with our fund holders, and we also work with nonprofits, because we believe, our mission is to help people and nonprofits invest generously in the lives of those who call kind of our community home. And so we serve our fund holders, which can be, like I said, corporations, families, individuals, nonprofits, all of those. But we also serve our nonprofit population, because we believe part of that mission is to help nonprofits achieve their mission. So there's a lot of work that we do around nonprofits. We have our own grant programs, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit. We have a professional development program that we do. It's called GROW, which stands for Growing Roots of Wisdom. And that's great ways for the folks to get leadership training or training around different topics and different areas of importance in the nonprofit world. They even are fund holders. So there's a lot of different ways that we support our nonprofits. And if that wasn't enough, we also do scholarships. So last year, we had about 300 scholarships that came out of the community foundation. And so that I think it equaled just over $500,000 of scholarships that went out. And so lots of different things that happen here. But our goal really is we want to help people, have an impact in our community, to really create positive change and impact to the areas that need it. And we do that in so many different ways. Like I said, I could talk for 3 hours specifically, but I figure we don't have that much time. So that's kind of just a very, very high level of what we do. I am excited that this is our 40th year doing this. And so when you think about that, the legacy of what the folks back then in 1985, which was a gentleman named Lou Folkley, who brought some people together to really create an organization focused on philanthropy. You know, I wondered sometimes what they would think today to see here we are managing about $130 million in charitable assets. You know, we have about 550 funds and working with folks all over North Georgia to really make these things happen. So it's really kind of, like I said, I love what I do, and I get to, you know, it's one of those great things when you find what you love and get to do it for a career. So I have the privilege of doing that with a great team every day.
Wow, I love all of that. I kind of a little bit of background of how I got connected with the Community Foundation is, first off, I live in North Georgia, so I am part of the community. But when I started working with nonprofits doing grant writing, I went to some of their grant writing classes, just got plugged in because, like she said, there's the GROW program, and there's a lot of resources for nonprofits or people working in nonprofits, whether it is those grant writing classes, if it's other support ways. And I actually met with some of the people at the Community Foundation just to plug myself in, making sure I was aware of all the programs that I needed to be aware of and anything else. And something we're really excited about is both me and Abe will actually be teaching in the GROW series this year. So I think I teach, I just wrote it on my calendar, February 27th and March 27th, about a month apart. And I'm teaching the grant writing classes. And then Abe, do you want to share a little bit about what you're teaching in that GROW series?
Yeah, I'm going to be teaching about how to have two wings to your airplanes. If you are going after grants or contracts, you need both sides of it. So I'm going to talk about how a organization, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, you need both aspects of it. And if you're for-profit, how you can work with nonprofits, or how you can actually set up a nonprofit, or if you're a nonprofit, how you can set up a for-profit and use that to go after different opportunities out there. So that class will be coming up in March.
I know, I'm so excited for that. Michelle, could you just tell our audience a little bit, you know, I see some people in the chat that already know you a little bit, but the people that don't, you know, what's your background and where, you know, where'd you come from? How did you get in the nonprofit world? Because everybody has their story of how they fell into this wonderful world, and we want to hear about yours.
Michelle, your audio is a little off right now.
Is that any better?
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Okay, sorry. I turned it up a little. Okay, let me try that again. So I am a former banker. Worked in banking for about 11 years and really loved kind of the work that I did in banking, loved the financial side of what I did. But I had the opportunity to go to Africa on a medical mission trip with my church. Now, I'm not medical. I don't even, I can't even look when they take, a shot. I have to look the other way. So it's nothing like that. But it was just the opportunity to really go and support people who were in need in a country I had not been to before. And so we went to Uganda. And we did this medical mission trip, and I call it the greatest and the worst trip that I've ever been on because the need was just horrific. We are so blessed here. We don't even understand how blessed we are, but it is truly, truly incredible. And, to see the need that these folks had, but yet they had this joy about them that we'll never understand because we had too much. And so it was a really life-changing trip for me. And when I came back from it, really felt like I needed to take the experience that I had in finance and banking and, the skills and talents and things that I could bring to the table and take it to something that would allow me to make an impact in my community that could really create change for people here. And so I left corporate America kind of on a crazy risk. And here I am all these years later, And it's really funny because I kind of joke when I read this job description back. My predecessor retired, and I've been in the role now 9.5 years. When I read the job description, I felt like it was written for me because it had everything about finance and banking that I loved, but every single thing we do makes an impact and creates change in our community. And so it doesn't get much better than that. So it is a kind of a unique. I had to go all the way around the world to get into this world, but I wouldn't change anything about it, and love what I do now.
Wow, that is so cool that you, like you said, you traveled to Africa and then it brought you back to the foundation. I know you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I want to know what's your favorite thing about getting to work in this nonprofit world? You're in a really cool spot because you are a foundation, so you get to you're not just with one nonprofit, you're with a lot. And that's the same kind of thing with me with grant writing. I get to help a lot of nonprofits instead of just one singular one. And what I found is I thought that I had a heart for just like a couple of things. And I realized that my heart is for a lot of things. When I start hearing about, all the amazing work that these people are doing, you're like, oh my goodness, like everybody's doing such amazing things. So what would you say your favorite thing about getting to work with, I know it's a hard question, but getting to work at the foundation?
It is a hard question. I will say one of the great things I love about my role and my job here at the Community Foundation is I get to work with so many different kinds of people. So this morning I was in a breakfast meeting with a nonprofit working on some strategic planning things for them. Then I get to meet with our fund holders and, hear what the vision folks have for their legacy and help them to bring that to life. Someone who wants to honor maybe someone who passed away with a scholarship, being able to work with them and make those things happen. And then, again, like you said, to work with all these incredible nonprofits. So I think my job is different every single day. So I love that. And I kind of run from one area, put one hat on for nonprofits and the other hat on for someone who wants to open a fund, to someone who wants to have a scholarship or any of those kind of things. And so I think what I love is just the ability to do all of those things and to be able to be connected with all of those people who love and support our community in so many different ways, but want to make a difference. And we're in a position where we get to help them create that and develop that. And that's really an amazing thing. So I do count my blessings that I get to do this every single day.
I love that.
You go into some, maybe one or two examples of different nonprofits that have come to you and say, hey, these are some of our goals and this is what we want to do. And then how do you take them from where they are, helping them craft their strategies and their plans, maybe their funding plans or whatever their goals are, and then where are they now? Give us maybe one or two examples of how you practically support a nonprofit through what you do there.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, again, there's a team of 9 of us here. So I do want to remind folks that there is a whole group of us who do this. And so I think, there's a lot of examples people could give around Grow and what they've learned from those experiences. I'm going to tell you, I have the opportunity a lot of times to meet with, the executive directors or with their, executive committees, really wanting counsel on how they can grow and expand their organizations, what they can do. And so, I think about, there's one specifically that, I'm not going to share the name because it is, the work we do, we honor that confidentiality, but, had an organization who, had money kind of sitting aside in a savings account, which if you know what savings account rates are, they're about like 0.05 maybe. And, that money had been sitting there for a really long time. Right. And, they kind of were in limbo of what they wanted to do, what was going on with them, didn't really have a clear strategic kind of goal or initiative of where they were headed, had a leadership change. So it was just kind of, everything was a little bit chaotic for them. And so I had the opportunity to sit down with their executive committee, really talking through, what those issues were that they were dealing with, looking at their financials, looking at the pieces of how they could really help themselves to increase that revenue or that revenue stream that they would have. And also how they could build out the strategies to get where they wanted to go. And so being able to have that opportunity to be there at the table with someone and work that way, getting them, they opened a fund with us and was able to grow that money. Our fund holders, if it's invested, we have a short-term and a long-term investment program, but our long-term investment program in 2023 earned, I think, 18.2%. This last year, we just got the numbers, and so I don't have the exact number, but it was around 13 to 13.5%, somewhere in there, which was, better than it would have been if it was invested in the market. And so when you are able to go back to someone and say, hey, this pot of money you had earned 0.05%, you've now made this on, and look what you can do with this. That was part of the success of that, but really also working with them on the deeper pieces of the strategy. How best, I'm a fundraiser. I'm not a grant writer, Lainey. I'm probably the worst grant writer you have, because I don't, that's not my wheelhouse, right? If you write me an email that's more than 2 paragraphs, I'm skimming. So I miss important details, right? But I love to be out with people and to help them build their strategies. And, I worked with them really on how to engage the community, what their strategies should be, and how they could move forward, and kind of help to coach that executive director a little bit over some time informally. And so, when I look at that and I look at where they are today, that was probably 3 years ago. And I look at where they are today, now they have this great surplus because they have this fund and they haven't touched it. So, over those years, it's grown, pretty significantly. They've, been able to implement some of the strategy that we helped to write around their fundraising piece. Also try to advocate for the executive directors a lot of times, because you guys may not know this, but sometimes people think that people that work in nonprofits should be, folks who, don't make a lot of money and sacrifice, their selves for these careers. And so I try to educate the executive committee or the finance committee about the importance of paying their people fairly and right, and making sure that they're taking good care of their people. So with this organization, we were really able to make that adjustment for them. And so, they've grown significantly. They now have, expanded their programming that they do. And like I said, they have the resources now to do that. They have stability, which they did not have, even educating on what to look for in board members, helping them to get that. So that's where I get to have the fun. And I say that, I don't say that in a way that, obviously they were struggling, but it is a great pleasure to be able to sit and work with someone and help them to grow or expand what they do. And so, that is a kind of an example of one of the things that I do. Again, there's a lot of ways our organization works with nonprofits and helps them. And, if you were having another team member sitting here, she'd give a different example that might be tied to grow, or might be tied to, another piece of what we do for nonprofits. But for me, I get to have that opportunity to work with the boards and with the executive directors. And I love that.
Another kind of moving into that, talking about executive directors, I don't remember the name of it, but you have a program that executive directors can join. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about this? Because I think this program is great for any executive director if you've been in a long time, a short time. And I've heard such great feedback from some of the executive directors I've worked with that have went through this program.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We actually have a few different programs. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. So I'm just going to tell you about both of them. How's that? We have one that is a year-long program that is an executive coaching program. And that one is an application-based program to where, we take usually 6 to 7 people in. They work with someone who is a retired organizational behavioralist who had his own consulting firm, and they learn together. In some of it's peer learning and some of it's one-on-one executive coaching with this gentleman named Neil. I call him my work therapist because he's amazing. And so that is a program that's had a lot of significant change. I think I've lost count now, but I think we're in year 8 of that. So we have 8 classes of those executive directors who have gone through the program. And it has really, we've seen a lot of significant change in great ways. Some folks use that to do strategic planning. Some folks use that to restructure their organization. There's a lot of great things that happened about that. So that one's already in process this year. The application process usually is open, I think, in November for that. But we also started another one last year that I also love for different reasons, and it's called Exec Club. So Exec Club, any of those who are executive directors for nonprofits probably sometimes feel like they're on an island. You know, they have all these challenges or things they're doing, but who are you going to talk to about that, right? Who is it that you're going to talk to when you're struggling, when, you know, you've got maybe a personnel issue or something that's going on? You don't want to go to your board necessarily because, you know, you want to be able to show you can handle it. You can't talk to staff about it. Who are you going to talk to? Where can you learn things about maybe HR or other things that you need? And so we listened to the nonprofits in North Georgia last year, and we started this program. Like I said, it's called Exec Club, and it meets, last year it met 4 times. This year it's meeting 6 times a year. We meet on Friday mornings every other month. And it's from 9 to 12. And so part of it's facilitated. So our next one, and you can join now, that is something that's registration's open now. But our first one that we're having in February, we actually have an HR attorney coming too, there to answer all of our questions, anything that anybody has about that. It is Vegas. And what I mean by that is that what happens in that meeting stays in that meeting. It's a confidential, safe space to have real conversation about things that are going on. So part of it's facilitated. Part of it is the group itself facilitating it so that we have our one-on-one time to talk about those issues. What is it that we can learn from each other? What are we struggling with? How can we do things, you know, to help each other? We have a listserv for that group so they can reach out. There's a great resource area where they can pull information from each other. And so that's another one that's exciting to me to have. And I'm going to add one more little thing to tell you that based on the feedback of that group, this year we've also added a managers club, which the executive directors asked for, which are for managers who don't run the organization, but they work in a nonprofit and have people reporting to them. And it will have that same kind of style, the same kind of confidentiality, the same kind of peer learning, all of those things to really help grow and develop those managers. So that's a new one I'm excited about as well. And all of those, both of those classes, those registrations are open. And what I think is cool is for both of those programs, the cost for the entire year is $350. So you're getting all of that, 6 sessions, you have the facilitators, you have this time together, it's $350. So most boards, if they know about this opportunity, are going to support that because they want, and if they won't, call me and I'll be glad to talk to your board about that because they want that. And so to have that and also to have the managers club, I'm really excited to see where that goes this year because those folks, need that support too. They're in the same kind of island. It just happens to be a different island. So there's a lot of great leadership programming that we run, but I know I told you more than you wanted to know, Lainey, but I wanted to share all 3 of those.
No, I love all of those opportunities. I think I only knew about the first one. I didn't know about Exec Club, which I love that so much. And I'm definitely going to be sharing that when I talk to execs because, I feel like every time you talk to an ED, they're sharing the same problems.
Oh, yeah.
I hear it from one, I hear it from another. So it's being able to connect those. And as the saying goes, a problem shared is a problem like split or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they're all dealing with the same things. People need more funding, the issues, everything that's going on. So I love
staffing, all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been great because we learn from each other. And, what I loved when we started Exec Club last year, we had it set up originally from 9 to 10:30, fully facilitated. The group themselves said, oh, no, we want this to be 9 to 12. We want time on our own. And they took it over. And which I loved is that, this is their time. And so they're the ones who planned what it looks like this year. And we'll continue doing that as we move forward because this is for those executive directors and we want it to be meaningful. And so I love the fact that they've taken ownership of it. And I hope lots of other executive directors will join us this year in the program. So
yeah, I love that. So a question I want to ask, I know we have a lot of viewers that come from all over. So we know that not necessarily the Community Foundation is for the North Georgia community. Can you define that? I know it's not necessarily this is a funny definition because we've talked about this a lot, but the definition of North Georgia, because some people say it's north of Atlanta. Some people, different people have different definitions. So what does the Community Foundation normally defined as North Georgia if somebody's wanting to get involved and learn more? And then the second part of that question, it kind of goes with it, is if we had somebody on here that they're not in North Georgia, can they still register for a class like for the online versions of it or no?
Okay. So to answer your first question, when I first came here, there were very clearly defined counties, right? And when we were working on our strategic plan back in 2019, I struggled with the fact that we had very clearly defined counties because, to your point, North Georgia is relative, right? You may live in Gilmer County and consider yourself North Georgia. You may live in Gwinnett County and consider yourself North Georgia. You may not, right? So when we really evaluated it, we really looked at kind of the areas that we felt made the most sense for us to be, supporting. We looked at where our fund holder bases are. We looked at where other community foundations serve, those kind of things. And so I kind of, to be safe, say it's almost that line from, say, Jackson, Hall, Forsyth, kind of, and push north, right? We go over, we kind of stop at the border. We don't go into Cherokee. Typically, that's covered by another community foundation. While we do have some work, we work in Jackson. While we do have some work in Athens, there's another community foundation that works there that we love to partner with. So we really try to be respectful of those lines. The great thing is we can all work together in different areas. There's no limits on that. But that's kind of where we look at, is that heart of it. I was doing some research yesterday through the census, and it's about 19 counties roughly that we kind of work regularly in within that kind of area. So that answers kind of your first question, which I know is not really a clear answer, but it's kind of what we go with. And then the second part of that is anyone can be on Grow. One of the big pieces that we were really focused on in our last strategic plan, and COVID sped it up for us really quickly, was to be able to offer our programming for Grow virtually as well as in person. I always love when people come in person because you're going to have that engagement. We always feed people. We love to feed people, and you're going to connect with other people, but it is available virtually. And we have someone who facilitates that and works with that. Margot Dolanth, if you guys know Margot, she's our vice president of nonprofit engagement, is phenomenal. She's the one who creates all the Grow curriculum. She's the one who kind of runs all of these pieces, but she has it all set up and all of that. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you can get online, you can join. We have a luncheon series. There's a whole Grow curriculum you can find on our website, but there is a luncheon series that you can do. Some of the kind of deeper dive programming might require you to be in person. It just depends on what the topic level is, but all of that can be seen. But you can be anywhere as long as you can get online. You can join one of our programs. And I will tell you, I do want to share one little thing with you that, the history of Grow. So again, Grow is our professional development program, but I think this is kind of cool. So Margot, who I just mentioned, also used to work in banking, and we actually worked together back in the day. And she and I, coming out of banking, I don't know what it is today, but back then was full of incredible professional development. Matter of fact, BB&T, when I worked there, had a BB&T campus that was on Wake Forest University's campus. And so when I went to the nonprofit world, it was kind of almost a culture shock of what was not available to nonprofits was the professional development, because there wasn't a budget. So when I started here, Margot, I stole her away from banking about 6 months after I came. And she and I just felt a real passion to create a program that would have quality courses and things that would be impactful and meaningful, but that would be affordable. And that's where Grow kind of came out of. And so, we started it really back in 2017. It's grown significantly. There's new programming this year that I'm super excited about, but that's really kind of the heart of where it came from, is that we wanted to be able to offer the folks in nonprofit the ability to have the kind of training that folks in corporate America get, but at prices that could be afforded.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we're sitting here today. A little bit of your vision for that kind of has bled into me and Abe's vision of, got involved with the community foundation. I'm going to classes and stuff like that. And I, once again, do grant writing. And I really was looking at, not necessarily, I was kind of taking a class I felt like I knew a lot about the grant writing, but more to be more official in it. So maybe I wanted to get a certificate or just something. I was just looking at different things of always, I love learning. So any way to expand my resources, I want to be able to do that. So when I was researching that, I came to Abe and I said, Abe, there's not a lot out there. And if it's out there, I've read the reviews and they're not really teaching what they need to be teaching. And so that's something that is in the works for GCA, is building out. We have something. So we work with both contracts and grants, so nonprofits and for-profits. Once again, they're married. We think that they work very well together. And Abe, a couple years ago, I took something called the CCM course. So It is the Certified Capture Management course, and it is so well done. It is, I think I learned more in that than I did in some of my college courses. It's a 12-week course, and it is amazing. It's a lot of work, so you put your work in, but you are going to leave there knowing so much. And I said that from the moment I started the class. I was like, this is just so well thought out. So when I was thinking of, I wanted to expand more on teaching this grant and making sure these were available for more people and, a range of people. I said, Abe is the perfect person for me to go to because he's done the CCM. So let's do the grant. And so that's something we're working on doing. But for that, to give these nonprofits resources, to give people, I think too, something that I have become really passionate about is getting people coming out of college into the nonprofit space. I think that there's, like you talked about, there's a stigma around people don't need to be paid as much, or people think that, and that's not necessarily the truth.
No, it's not.
So really trying to work on that. And how I actually got into grant writing is I did an internship in college. They came to our college, nonprofits did, and we were paired with nonprofits to do their grant writing. So we learned how to do grant writing through other nonprofits. And I don't think it's available now because I've reached back out to teachers and stuff, and I think they kind of faded away the class. But I would love to bring that more into the nonprofit world of getting people very involved in it from college and coming out and just being able to offer more resources, because I think that that's always fun, but it's also getting just more people to build up this world.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that there is resources. Like I said, when we really looked at who we serve, and we grew really, really fast. When I came on, we were at $42 million in assets, and I said earlier we're at 130 million. We had such significant growth. We wanted to make sure we defined who we serve and how we can do that. And so I was really, really appreciative of our board, when we were doing the strategic plan back in 2019, because that was a really big kind of shifting courses of what we were doing. And, they were so supportive of the fact that, yes, this is part of our mission. This is part of what we do. We own 2 buildings here in Gainesville and only rent to nonprofits and that kind of group. And, we offer, a service here that Margo's going to kill me because I can never remember the name of, Foundation Directory Online, where that people can come in and search for grant opportunities. And that's free of charge. We cover the cost. You guys can do that. We have Grow that we offer. We have grant programs that we do. There's so many different ways that we're working with nonprofits. And, when we talk about Grow too, one thing that I think is really kind of neat, when you talk about that program, the executive coaching program, the one that you said you knew about, that's a year-long program. If you were going to get that kind of program in corporate America, it cost you probably 25 grand. Let's be real. We were able to price ours down where when you start the program, you pay $2,000 up front, right? If you participate, if you show up, if you are connected and, engaged, when you graduate, you get $1,000 grant back. So you've paid $1,000 to get that same kind of program. But we also understand there were nonprofits that are smaller that maybe that was still a stretch. So we went to a couple of our fund holders and asked if they would be willing to help us start a Grow Scholarship program. And so we were able to do that. And so now if a nonprofit couldn't afford to do that type of a payment, they can apply for support. So we can really help everyone. And that to me is part of what makes me really proud of what we do, is while we are supporting the fund holder side, and that is so important to what we do, we, are supporting those families and those businesses and all of that. But we also have this completely other side of what we do that is for the nonprofits and giving them the support they need. And again, that's led by some incredible team members here at the Community Foundation.
Yeah, I love that. I have wanted to ask about this. So if somebody was interested in creating a fund with you, kind of how does that work? And then I've always been curious, is there a minimum amount? Is it any amount? Like what kind of goes into that? What does that look like?
So, the great thing is there's a lot of different type of funds that we have. So I'm going to give you kind of a couple examples of them. First of all, I will say there's only one type of fund that we have that has a minimum requirement, and that's a scholarship fund. And the reason for that is any scholarship we open, we want it to be endowed. And what that means is that it'll be here today, tomorrow, and in perpetuity. So a scholarship that's happening from the Community Foundation here in 2025 will be happening in, 2035, and it'll be happening in whatever, 100 years from now, 500 years from now, it literally will stay forever. So that is the only fund that has a minimum, which is $30,000. But the rest of the funds that we have, we want everybody to be philanthropic. So we don't put a minimum on any other type of fund. So probably the most popular fund that we have is what's called a donor advised fund. I have one and I love it. And I'll kind of give you some reasons why. A donor advised fund is one where, an individual, a family, we actually have a corporate line of products. So a company can do this as well. You opened a fund. Mine is called the Michelle Prater Charitable Fund. When I pass away, it's actually going to have the name changed to the Buckeye Fund because I'm an Ohio State Buckeye fan. Had to throw that in there. So I want people who get grants from me after I die to remember that. So it can be named anything you want it to be named. But basically, all my charitable giving goes into this fund. So I write a check to the community foundation. I only have to worry about the receipt from the community foundation. I don't have to find the 25 receipts of everywhere I give to. And the community foundation does all the administrative work of my giving. Right. So I put the money in my fund. I want to do a grant to a nonprofit I'm really passionate about. I can go online. I can, put that information in, or I could email Margot and say, hey, I want to do a $1,000 grant to XYZ nonprofit. She handles all that for me. I can go back in our portal and I can see who I gave to last year, 5 years ago, all of those pieces of it that make it really, really simple to give. I can give anonymously if I want to give. It simplifies the process for the donor because it puts it all in one place. Plus, I don't have to, like I said, search for 25 different tax letters. All I have to do is find the North Georgia Community Foundation ones or call them if I can't find it, right? The other piece of it too is that money grows. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a short-term and a long-term investment. So when instead of just handing my money out to people, maybe I don't want to give it all out right then, it can sit there and grow. And it can give me more money to be able to make greater impact. And I can build legacy. So in my future planning, my estate planning recently, I just finished it over the summer. I put my donor advised fund in there because what I've learned about myself is my interests change. So when I did my will 10 years ago, I named some nonprofits who are still great nonprofits, but I haven't seen them in 10 years because I work here now instead of working in the area that I worked in before. So instead of having to do any of that, all my charitable money will go into my donor advised fund. And then I work with someone here at the Community Foundation to talk about what I want my future planning to be. Maybe I want to create a scholarship, or maybe I want to create an endowment for a nonprofit, or have a grant cycle that's called that'd be really good, the Buckeye grant cycle. I have to talk to Margot about that one. But I can kind of create that and then I can change my mind. And there's no cost for any of that. You don't have to redo anything. So to me, that's a really powerful one that can be done. Businesses love to do it because, again, it kind of puts a layer of protection between them and they can give anonymously if they want to. We've had fund holders who teach their children about legacy through that, where they'll have their children go out and research a nonprofit and come back and tell them why they'd want to give, and how as they've gotten older, that would become, a little bit more serious. And then it became a match. And, there's just so many ways to use that type of fund. Opening it takes 5 minutes. It's the easiest thing in the world to open a fund like that. And there is no minimum. So that's probably the most popular fund. There's we have a field of interest fund. If there's a group of folks who are passionate about a certain area of work, they can come together and open a fund to support things like that. Nonprofits, we have a couple of different type of funds that nonprofits can open, and we have probably about 125 nonprofit funds right now. And again, it helps them to support the work they do. It adds kind of extra protection and what we call third-party oversight, which donors like to see, that someone else is kind of protecting their money for them. Boards like that. And again, it allows them to grow that money. The person I met with this morning had put money in. They put $500,000 in several years ago. They now have $1 million because they've never touched it. So it's that kind of thing that, we can help with. So I could go on and on, but every fund's a little bit different, but that kind of gives you an example. And I would say everyone should have a donor advised fund. To me, it's the greatest way to be able to give and to keep track of your giving and, really make a great impact. So again, I could go on for days on that one, but that gives you an example. But it is very easy to open the fund. We make that very easy.
That makes me want to come open a donor advised fund.
I'll be glad to help you with that, lady, anytime.
I did have one question about that is, so I know you said it's the taxes is on the front end. So when you put that money in, I guess you get the tax write-off for that for your taxes for that year, correct? We don't have to go into a whole tax law. I just
yeah. And I always have to say as a disclaimer, I'm not a CPA, so I'm not giving you tax advice. But yes, that is correct. When you make the donation to the North Georgia Community Foundation that's going into your fund, you receive your receipt letter at that time. So you may take a couple of years to spend it out, or you may want it to grow first before you spend it out, or you may be building an endowment, which is again, where you don't touch the principal, you will let it grow. So you just spend the interest. You may be doing those things. You get the tax benefit at the beginning. A lot of folks also use a community foundation to avoid some capital gains tax. So people donate stock. They may donate, land. There's a building on the square here in Gainesville that we owned for about 2.5 days. We owned 87% of it because a donor donated that to us so that at the closing, when we signed all the paperwork, that money would then come back and go into their donor advised fund. So it helped them to avoid paying some capital gains tax. And instead, they're going to be able to use that money to make great impact to nonprofits. So lots of ways to use it, but you do get that tax benefit on the front end.
Yeah, and one of our listeners actually has a question, so I'm going to put it on the screen. It says, which I think we answered this a little bit, but can nonprofits transfer a portion of their fund in order for it to grow?
Absolutely. So we have, like I said, many nonprofits that work with us that have funds with us. And so they have a fund just kind of like I was describing for other ones, but there's ones that are made specifically for nonprofit organizations. And so, some have short-term needs, some have long-term needs. So we have kind of the fund opportunities for both. There's some IRS guidelines that I won't get into the detail of why we have different types of funds for nonprofits, but absolutely. So a lot of nonprofits will take that money that's set aside for long-term, and they'll open a fund with us. They'll put it in there. The great thing about those type of funds is there's something called a board resolution that goes along with it. That is basically the nonprofit's board telling us what can and cannot be used for the fund. So it adds a layer of protection. It covers the protection of the executive director, so that it requires, us as the community foundation to follow the instructions on that, as well as, requiring more than one person's signature to get the money out. So it kind of protects everybody involved and makes sure the money is used as intended, but it does allow it to grow. And like I said, in 23, our fund holders, which included nonprofits, earned the 18.3 if they had invested in our long-term balance pool. Last year, again, I don't recall, we just got the results, but I want to say it's between 13 and 13 and a half. What I will tell you that's really cool that I did not mention, we've used the same long-term investment for the past 21 years now. And the average annual rate of return for that investment is 9.9%. So let's think about the last 20 years of what you would have had happen. There was a little bit of the dot-com kind of boom, and then the crash kind of thing that happened back in 2004. If some of you that might be more my age might remember the real estate in 2008 to 2010, the crash and how that impacted the market, what happened in 2022, which I really like to block out, all of those things. But yet our investment program and investment strategy that we use for nonprofits and for our fund holders that are long-term is averaging almost 10% a year. And so that tells you what a great program it is. And it's one that we have our own reserves and everything in, but nonprofits absolutely can do exactly what was just asked.
Wow.
And Margot is the one you can talk to about that. She actually works on those with the nonprofits as well.
Yes, that's so amazing. I do have a question. We've put some of, y'all's website and stuff, so we can say how, if you're in the North Georgia area, which we defined it as, if you can get in contact with you, or if somebody was wanting to reach out to their local community foundation, like how would you describe for them to go around about that, and just like finding their local community foundation? I know you can do a Google search, but like I feel like you, and I don't know, maybe all community foundations like this, I feel like y'all are very open and kind of easy to get in contact with. Have you heard that with other community foundations?
So I kind of always jokingly say, when you've met one community foundation, you've met one community foundation. We all have a very similar mission, but we all work very, very differently. One of the things that was important to me when I came on here, again, coming from what I called old school banking, was that level of service, right? That high level of response, prompt, quick response, great customer service that people could count on us. So we probably are a little bit more extreme at that. Like our business card has our cell phone number on it. I know people are like, you're crazy to do that, but we really want to be accessible. So I don't want to say that everybody would be that way. What I can say, there are some really great community foundations out there. And really we do make ourselves really available. We're really out there. Some are that way, some aren't. It just depends. Some may serve nonprofits, some don't. And I don't mean don't, they still do grants and things for them, but they don't do like the programming and things like we do. Some do it differently. So they really are all different. The easiest way to find yours, if you don't know, is probably to do a Google search of that, putting in what's the community foundation in, city, state. I will tell you, in Georgia, we have a great network of community foundations. We actually, all the CEOs meet quarterly via Zoom, and once a year get together in person. And then every other year, we bring our teams together. That's something actually us and the North Georgia Community Foundation facilitated, because we felt like it was so important to get our scholarship people together with other scholarship people. So we have a whole network here in Georgia that works together. We created a listserv for those folks. So there's some really great ones in the state of Georgia. And if somebody had a question, I'd be happy to, kind of recommend them. But it is something that they all look very different. They're all, typically very incredible organizations. They just do it all very, very differently. I think that no matter what, I think it would be beneficial if you don't know yours and you don't know where it is or who's there, to do that research, to check in with them, to meet them, because there's a lot of great things. And there's a lot of great partners, and they're all different sizes and, shapes. And the largest one in Georgia is the one in Atlanta, and Frank, who runs that, does a great job. They do a lot of, work more in funding kind of specific areas and things, which they can do because they're $1 billion. I want to say that one day about us, but $1 billion group. So they focused on very specific areas and doing, kind of more than just funding. They're actually running programs, which is great. But there's some wonderful ones throughout this state and others. So certainly easy to get connected to it, but I would encourage you to, and find out what they do and how you can partner with them.
Yeah. And you do an amazing job of communicating, getting back with people. It was very easy for me, even when I just was reaching out for the first time. It was so nice to have the communication back. I've actually reached out. I was working on a project and reached out to some other community foundations. They're out of state, so they weren't in Georgia, and had a little bit harder of a time getting them to get back with me. And I was like, dang it. Like, I was hoping it was going to be as easy as my home community foundation.
Yeah. Well, and again, for me, it does stem back to that old school banking. I used to always say people bank with a person, not a building, not brick and mortar. I kind of feel the same way here. I need to, have a personal relationship with the people we work with, and they need to be able to reach me or, Margot or anyone else on our team, Megan and Angel and everybody else, Abby, all the folks who work here, they know them, and depending on what they do for us, the scholarship team, they know those scholarship fund holders, our grants teams, they know those nonprofits. Margot knows the Grove folks, like, she can remember stuff about nonprofits I can never even think of. Abby knows the folks that she works with our other grant programs with Opportunity and other programming that we do. It's so important to me that we have that, but that is probably what I consider my upbringing in banking, if that makes sense. For us to kind of have that level of it. So, and I have the best team in the world. So of course they're going to be that way, but I'm a little partial.
Yeah. So
I think it's always about team, and I'm glad that you got a great team there.
Yeah.
We're going to, in a few seconds here, if you have any questions for Michelle, go ahead and put it in the chat area. We're going to take a few quick questions before we wrap up today's episode here. But you've shared a lot of great things with our audience here. Can you share some current grants or scholarships that you guys might be opening up in the near future?
Sure.
For people to kind of maybe explore a little bit?
Yeah, so absolutely. So let's talk scholarships first, because that January 15th is the opening application date for scholarships. And there's a whole list of scholarships on our website. But the great thing is, if you have that senior in high school or someone who fits the qualifications, they can go in after the 15th when we open and do a common application, and it will tell them what scholarships they qualify to apply for. So that one, you want to get on there. That's through March 1st. Do not miss that because, it can be a great help for those who might have folks in college to spread that word. And the grant program, I do want to take a minute just to share a little bit of background as we talk about also what's coming up. So when I started with the Community Foundation, and again, I can only base it off then because that's when I came, which was the end of 2015. The Community Foundation was given away through our own endowment. We have our own money set aside specifically for grant programming, right? We were giving away about $25,000 a year. And so I want you to imagine 60 applications and having to select who do you give this portion of $25,000 to, right? So one of the things we've been very fortunate with the growth that we've had is to be able to grow that. So in 2024, we now have 3 grant programs. We had one back then, but we now have 3 grant programs we run. In 2024, we granted out through all of our grant programs $691,263. So think about the difference between that. The other thing I want to share is we've been doing a grant program of some type since 1999. So since 1999 through 2024, we've granted out about $3.35 million. But here's the cool thing. 2.975 of it, so almost 3 million of that, has been in the past 5 years. So the reason I'm sharing that is because it's about when we are growing, the asset growth, all the things we've talked about, it helps us to grow this, right? So this is what's really important to us. My dream one day and goal is that we have enough money to grant out to cover all of the qualified applications that we receive. That's my dream. We got a little ways to go on that, but we're working on it. But so, to be able to make that kind of an impact and really to go from where we were making 25,000 now to almost 700,000 is pretty significant. And so we're really excited about that. Our grant program, the NGCF Community Grant Program, is the one that everybody's very familiar with. It runs, the application cycle on that opens July 15th. We actually have a special class in Grow that is specifically about our grant program, what they're looking for, what kind of common mistakes we see, all of those pieces. So mark your calendars for that. It's on the curriculum if you look at the list of what's happening in 25. So that is one that is really, really important and where we give out a pretty significant amount of dollars. And then we also have what's called a discretionary grant program that it came out of COVID, because one of the things the Community Foundation did not have was a pot of money set aside if a nonprofit had a minor emergency, right? A women's shelter's refrigerator blows up, right? An organization that has one employee and their computer blows up. One we had yesterday was about water, and there's really gross stuff in their water, and I can't even describe it, but it was an emergency that people needed because they couldn't, it was a women's shelter, I believe, or something, that couldn't shower because of the gross stuff that was coming into the water. So, those things that are really unexpected, that is something that we now have, because when in 2020, when we realized with COVID, we didn't have those kind of things. We're like, we have to have this on a normal basis. We had it during COVID because we were doing COVID relief. So we now have what's called discretionary grants. And that is about emergency, purchases or emergency situations that happen, not just because you want something to happen or you want to fund something, but it's those emergencies. So, and then we have another grant program that is one that nonprofits can't apply for. But what I would say is make sure the people in your community and the folks here at the Community Foundation know what's going on with your organization, because it funds new or expanding programs or initiatives that have significant impact. So we started this in 2019. First thing we did was fund the Gainesville City Police Department to hire mental health specialists, right? We funded organizations that were expanding to different counties or expanding, a service that they were providing, or, those kind of things. But it is when we have a committee that looks for these things, a committee of leaders throughout North Georgia. I'm not going to tell you who, so you guys don't blow them up, but just making sure that people know what's going on with you. So, but yes, but all that really takes place later in the year. So scholarships are the big deal right now. And then the grant piece will come up, midsummer.
Yeah, so I think we have a question that I want your input on. I'm going to put it on the screen. I think this is something we talk about a lot. What mistakes do we talk about in grant writing? What mistakes do people make in grant writing, proposal writing, but what mistakes or common reasons you might reject support? And I want to say this before you answer. The Northridge Community Foundation, as someone who has went through their grant cycle, does an amazing job at making their expectations very clear. They have their rules. Like she said, there's an entire class in Grow that walks you through question by question on what they're looking for in the response. And I think they do a great job of being very just crystal clear of what they want. They're not getting you to jump through hoops. This is what we want. And I wish more people would take that approach with grants of, hey, give us a black and white question. We want to know what you want. We want to know what you're going to use the money for, and just very black and white instead of trying to jump through all these hoops. I say that to say, what typical mistakes or common reasons have you seen for rejecting? I know you're not over the grant, but just anything that maybe comes to top of your head.
Yeah. And like I said, we do have an incredible team of folks, Abby, Angel, and Margot, who run those programs. I get to peek my head in and look in at things, which I love. I will tell you some of the most common ones. And this is why I kind of chuckled when I said I'm not a grant writer, because this is what I would do. People who don't follow the instructions exactly as they are written, right? That's where I would probably fail. Because I just skim things. But so that's a big one. So, if we say that you can apply for 500 to 25,000 and you ask for 30,000, you're immediately kicked out. If we say that you have to answer a question and instead of answering the actual question, you're cutting and pasting from another grant application, it doesn't, make sense. That's not going to help you. I also think one of the things that's become more of a predominant focus is board giving. Asking, and this came straight from our board of directors who wanted this question on the application is, does 100% of your board give? And that's been one that we've really seen a pretty good focus on. So that's one that, we don't necessarily reject it. I think we'll get to the place that we probably eventually will, because if your board members aren't going to support you, why should we? That's kind of the mentality of it. And if your board needs to hear that from someone, I'm happy to share that with them, because sometimes it's better to hear from that external person and a funder, instead of they don't always listen internally. But, those are kind of the things that we see is just not answering the question properly, not having board giving and not following directions, which is a shame, because those are things that are easily fixable, right? Unless you're like me and I skim things, which is why I'm not a grant writer. But, I do think that they're more common mistakes. But that's why we do that class. We want people to have great, and I will say we've had some really great, this past year was a really tough year to make decisions. We had 122 applications. I think we ended up funding 45 nonprofits. And that was hard because there were some really good applications. So sometimes it might just be that we ran out of money before we got to you. I will say that in addition to our funding, one of the things that Margot does is that she takes those applications then and tries to be your advocate by going to our fund holders. And there's some cool things that we'll have coming up in the future that we'll be able to get those applications that were qualified, that scored well, in front of other funders if we're not able to fund them. So stay tuned on that.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. You have been so amazing in answering all this information, and I hope that people will get involved with the Northridge Community Foundation. They'll reach out to their own community foundation, and I hope that we'll see some people that were on here or watching playbacks come to the Grow classes. I know that Abe, we have an exciting announcement. We have a launch on Monday, so he wanted to share a few things about that before we log off for the day.
Well, Michelle, it's been just a privilege learning so much about what you do at the North Georgia Community Foundation. And all of our audience, if you are here, you can reach out to them directly if you need different access to different things there. But we have some things we want to share a little bit in terms of what's happening here at GCA. I'm going to share my screen here. We are doing a launch, alpha launch. And we're creating a whole new, what we call the GovCon community. And so anyone can come and have access to lots of different information that's available here in the GovCon community. And you can come in here if you want to learn about grants and contracts. You can go to grants here and then just see what's available here. There's a poll, there's some grants that we're going to be posting here. If you want to talk about government contracting itself, there are different areas for government contracting. If you want to find events to attend, you can click on all the different events. If you want to look at the whole calendar event, you can kind of look at the calendar event here. So we've got a lot of different things. We're looking for, if you are interested, we're looking for early founding members. So this is a chance to kind of come in early. We're doing our alpha launch. So we're not necessarily launching to everybody yet. So if you're part of an immediate community, whether you're part of a social community or active members of the GCA, or if you're just a part of our, if you're listening in today, this is your opportunity to kind of get in early on something here. And so we got really special access for all of you who's interested in joining us. So there's going to be a lot of different things that's going to be available in here. One cool thing that we're going to be doing is we have what's called our pitch day. And so Teaming Tuesday is where you can come and you can pitch whatever you're working on. And you can say, hey, I need a partner to do this here. I need someone who can help me with this here. And so you can come and pitch your needs, whether it's funding needs, whether it's teaming needs, whether it's support needs or different things like that. You can come and pitch in a live environment. You do have to apply to get on the list so that you can be one of the presenter. But it's 3-minute pitches. So it's an hour long. The first few minutes just getting everybody prepped up, and then after that is 3-minute pitches. And so you can kind of pitch what you're all about here. So come join us. My producer is going to put the link into the GovCon community, into the chat area, and we'd love for you guys to be part of our early founding members of the community. And sometime, we've been dreaming about doing this for a while, and it's finally here. So 2025 is a year where you guys get to grow with us, alongside with us here as well. So with that, Lane, I'm going to turn it back to you and see if there's any final comments or questions from anybody that have questions for Michelle.
Yeah, I'm gonna, Michelle added a comment, and it's to email their Director of Executive Operations if y'all have any questions regarding the North Georgia Community Foundation. And I don't see any more questions coming in. We're gonna wait a few more seconds to see that. But yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. Once again, it was such a pleasure having you on our podcast.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And I do want to say thank you to all of those who are on here for, number one, listening, but most importantly for what you're doing for our community, whether it's here in North Georgia or elsewhere. The work that nonprofits do, the work that you guys do on the what I call the front lines that I am not capable of doing, it really means a lot, and it's making great impact. So if you get discouraged, just remember that there are people that are cheering for you and helping you and supporting you behind the scenes. So thank you for all that you do.
Yes, thank y'all so much. Well, I hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Next week, we will have our podcast Wednesdays at 11:30, and we have a special guest coming again. His name is Sadell, and he's going to tell us a little bit about into like the backside of searching for grants and what that looks like. It's kind of like a different version of Candid and FDO. So we're really excited to kind of see all the ins and outs of that.
It's the budget-friendly version of Candid. So if you are interested to come and learn about that platform there, join us next week. And if you're joining us this week here, join us in our, you can watch the replay. Go to youtube.com/@GovAssociation for all of our replays, whether it's this episode or any other previous episodes. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And we appreciate all of you joining us. Hang on tight, because 2025 is going to be an amazing years for your growth in your own organization. And thank you for joining us and signing off. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.